What's going on, YouTube? Southern Comic Geek coming to you with some Star Wars talk with Mr. Sith Lordly, who is already here. What's going on, sir?
I see your saber, and here's mine.
We fight each other right here. What's going on today, man?
How you doing, man? I really like that the Christmas little intro clip you had there.
You know, somebody in the community sent that to me. I didn't even ask him to, but he had created my my other intro that I have, and so he just sent it to me and said, "Hey, use this for the next few days." I said, "Okay, cool."
I know Lady Sith will love that because she's all about Christmas. Downstairs, we got a Christmas tree. I can't even walk because there's so much Christmas stuff everywhere.
Well, so my wife will put Christmas up on Thanksgiving, but it comes down the day of Christmas. You know, so does your wife leave January 1?
Oh, yeah, it's up. I do recall her actually watching Christmas movies on Hallmark like earlier. Like it's like all Christmas on Hallmark all the time. And she actually got me sucked into Hallmark too. So I do enjoy a good Hallmark movie. I know that may not jive with Sith Lordly, but, you know, it's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know Hallmark movies are typically not dark like a Sith, but, you know, much fear and weakness in you. Hallmark movies, which are all alike, right? You know, somebody shows up, she's got this guy that she really don't need to be with. She meets this old flame, they rekindle it, and she drops that dude for the guy that she really loves.
I gotta fill you in on a little secret. You know, like the MCU, I was actually thinking about creating the HCU, the Hallmark Cinematic Universe, where I was going to do like data bank on all the various characters. I actually bought a Hallmark movie. This is breaking information no one's ever heard about me before.
You heard it here.
Yeah, Hallmark Cinematic Universe. It was like my bright idea for about 2 weeks. I was like, Lady Sith, this is going to be great. Let's do a YouTube channel on it. We'll get some audience members. But, you know, I never did it.
So all I have to do is say Star Wars, and Mr. Garrel is here up in here. We've got some other folks, of course. You mentioned Lady Sith Lordly up in the house. Thank you for joining. We've got Joshua Sledge taking notes. We've got No Good Comics, a little X-Men aficionado, and then we've got Perry. The Force toe is strong with this one. Of course, Perry and his Corona toe up in here. And we got Slotted Up 503. What's going on? Chinmo, what's going on, everybody? We got Real Fair Dinkum. Look, if he starts recommending websites, full disclosure, don't necessarily go to them.
Okay.
I was in a stream last night, and he recommended one, and then everybody's like, "No, don't tell her to go there."
Sounds like a fun guy.
Yeah, he's from the land down under.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from Australia. So, well, you know, I reached out a while back to you, and we kind of scheduled this to talk about some Star Wars. Now, you know, we're going to go all the way back to your original experience in Star Wars and pull it forward to today. But if somebody, people that are in the chat are not familiar with you, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say what's up to the chat. I recognize a lot of the names. Slotted Up just had a great show last night with Gary B and was it Small Town Collectibles? Yeah, so hey, everybody in the chat. Got my Jar Jar shirt on here. This is actually Lady Sith shirt, but I like wearing it. Been a Star Wars fan all my life. I mean, you know, I can recall, you know, from my very first Star Wars experience up until, you know, what I'm doing with Star Wars now. I love, as you can see from my background, I love the toys, I love the books, I love the comics, I love the role-playing games, everything Star Wars, especially, and I know we'll probably get into this, but especially the old Star Wars canon by Dark Horse. That's my favorite Star Wars time period. All the novels, I got a whole bookcase full downstairs. But I do love comic books outside of that, like Marvel, DC. In particular, I love the Bronze Age and Silver Age comics, and that's really what I'm collecting right now.
All right, and I think you were telling me earlier before we went live that, and I too have a shirt on that probably gets more warm and fuzzy feelings inside of everybody. Yeah. Grogu, or Baby Yoda, as he's still known by some people. But you were telling me earlier that you actually went to the theaters and saw Star Wars: A New Hope when it came out.
That's right. Yeah, I'm old enough to have gone to see Star Wars in 1977. I remember at the Chinese theater. Saw all of them, obviously. Empire, I've got memories of each one. The first Star Wars a little fuzzy because I was pretty young. Empire, though, I remember, having the Yoda figure and, having that Marvel, the Super Special magazine, which I've just reacquired for Empire, which, by the way, is my favorite Star Wars movie of all time, is Empire Strikes Back.
Well, you beat me to the next punch, because I was going to ask me what your favorite Star Wars movie was, and
and I have a ranking, but yeah, that's my favorite. And of course, Return of the Jedi. I grew up in LA, so all of my Star Wars experiences are, those ones were in Los Angeles. I got family members who worked in entertainment and things like that. I worked in entertainment, so saw those there. And then of course the prequels, and I don't want to get ahead of the show, but yeah, Star Wars.
Well, like earlier, we've got to go off on tangents. We are talking about Star Wars in general, and the kind of the purpose of this. And it seems that, I guess all fan bases are this way, but in particular, in my mind, Star Wars fans can be very passionate about their hobby. And so we're not looking to hack anybody off. I was joking about the Jar Jar thing earlier. So we'll get into our personal feelings regarding Marvel's decanonization of the old novels, and it's just two men less than humble opinion. So don't take any offense to it. Certainly don't thumbs down the videos. Matter of fact, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification, so that when videos like this drop episode randomly, you will be one of the first people to know and can make the conscious decision as to whether to watch it now or later. But as long as you watch it, we appreciate you. Having got that out of the way, I would say the Empire would probably be mine as well. I just think that it was a good in between the bookends of New Hope and Return of the Jedi. There was enough laughter, but there was also some gravity to the characters. And so when you have characters, and this especially goes for comic books, in particular Marvel comic books nowadays, when a character can die and stay dead,
right.
Something, right?
That's true.
And so that's kind of the deal there. And so we've of course got Azor's Tiger up in the house. He must have left the honey hole for a little bit to come visit with us, and so appreciate that.
Happy birthday to Azor's Tiger.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't ask you how old you are or young you are. How about that? But happy birthday to you. But yeah, so Empire really did that. So let's talk about dive into Dark Horse Comics. So, my experience with Dark Horse Comics is when I got rid of my comic books, all my comic books back in like 99 or 2000. On occasion, until up to last year when I really started getting back into collecting. I would pick up when I would go to the bookstore, because I'm a nerd, go to the bookstore, they would have what are still considered newsstands, Star Wars books. And having been a Star Wars fan, reading the books and still reading the books, I would pick up the Dark Horse comics. And so like what you said, the Dark Horse comics, to me, there are some one-offs that were really not all that good, but for the most part, it was really great. Dave Dorman's art killed it, crushed it. But it's amazing how this stuff, not even being canon, and Ahsoka Tano is a good example of that. But this stuff, not even being canon, has shot up so dramatically in price here recently. For the Jedi Academy. That first Kip Duran, and that was dollar bin fodder forever. And I noticed on Key Collector, and it's now a $40 book.
Right.
This is the first Star Wars book that I read. Went back and read, of course, New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and all that. But this was the first one, and so by Kevin Anderson.
I suspect, without any spoilers, I suspect that's some Mandalorian spec going on with that Jedi Academy series.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I mean, it's they're thinking, okay, when they build the Jedi Academy out, will some of those characters be in there and going into the future? Because I know they've started dropping some characters with the Rise of Kylo Ren comic line. Yeah, so people are probably getting ahead of the curve on that one. But
anything Star Wars is hot right now, man. I'm just seeing books that are, like you said, dollar bin fodder before, that everything is just going up. And I don't flip Star Wars. I keep it all, but it's interesting to see, just things taking off. So just be careful.
Your experience with Dark Horse Comics, and Star Wars.
Okay, well, I took a different route to it. In the 90s, I was showing you, right, these kind of things, right? The Star Wars role-playing game books, which this would be the second book in the Timothy Zahn Heir to the Empire Thrawn trilogy. So a lot of these books were written with expanded universe material. So I was more picking up this stuff. I was reading the novels. I actually didn't get into, because I was out of comic collecting. I sold my collection in about 86 as a kid, right? I got back in the late 90s, but only for X-Men, and I sold that again. I started picking up all the Dark Horse comics around 2004. So I was reading novels all the way through, but I didn't get back into the comics for Star Wars until around then. But, fortunately, everything you see behind me, all these short boxes, it's full of Dark Horse comics. I think there's very few that I don't own, like the little variants or the Platinum Edition or something like that. But yeah. I own pretty much every Dark Horse comic of Star Wars, and I love them. I read them. I've read them, and I'll never let them go.
So talking about Dark Horse Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Mind's Eye,
yep.
Which for people that read the novels know that this was the first one that was released. It set right after A New Hope.
Yeah.
Alex Foster, I believe. And so I actually read kind of a side deal, squirrel, right? But I read that Marvel was not paying the royalties that he was supposed to be getting for Splintering Mind's Eye. But I got these from a guy not near Mint. He was doing an auction, and you'll notice, or hopefully you can notice. Bub's Comics is in the chat, and he says to never apologize for the glare. So I'm not going to, Bub. But that is Mark Hamill's signature. So Mr.
Wow, okay.
That's issue 3, and then I also got issue 4 signed by Mark Hamilton. So,
are you going to send those into CBCS?
No need to. I mean, I could. But they're a little rough around the edges, so all that do would hack me off when I got a low grade for it. I could let that Mylar magic work.
Yeah,
and people, oh wow, that's awesome. And I don't plan on selling it, right? So
another thing you can do is look into these. I've been buying these One Touch Ultra Pro slabs, if you will. Because I collect sports cards, but the comics. So this is a comic in Mylar in the One Touch, and it looks great. And I'm not going to send this in for grading because I'm kind of there you go. I've been after buying Star Wars in 9/8 because I own them all raw, right? So I'm not going to buy a slab unless it's a 9/8 because I already own it raw. And so that's just my little thing. But I've got a ton of these One Touch slabs now, which presents well with the Mylar.
Yeah, I actually bought this raw from a community member. Nice. And on an auction, and pressed it and sent it off, and I was happy to come out with that 9.6. For those of you who don't know, that's not Boba Fett on the cover. But anyways, so yeah, I mean the Dark Horse stuff is great. I'm sure you remember the Vector run.
Yeah,
I've
got that plus also the trade paperback because I've been buying the trades so I can read those instead of my books to preserve once I've read the comics to preserve their quality.
Yeah, and talking about that, that's largely how I read Star Wars in the Dark Horse days, was like the Clone Wars paperback editions is what I because they were more readily available. So this one I actually got signed by Scott Hepburn, right there at a con last year. That was his first work. He's more known for his Deadpool work, but this was his first art. I didn't know it at the time. It was just I knew he was going to be there, so I looked in my collection to see for stuff he'd done.
Mm-hmm.
And the one I said, okay, well, I'll pull it out and get him to sign it. And then he goes, well, that was my first work. I said, well, worked
Oh,
out great.
yeah.
Yeah. So we got a couple more folks up in the chat. Of course, I mentioned Bub's Comics. Need some clear backing boards for those cases. They look great. So I just got something in, Bub, and I'm going to be doing a video on that and be releasing it to the community with hopefully a little bonus for those people who use a certain code. But so there's a spoiler right there. So we've got Warlord up in the house. He was up in a stream I was on last night. Comics and Pops up in the house. We got Just a Little Podcast. Legion of Comics. What's going on, man? How is it going today? And I think we called up on the chat. So
I want to give a shout out to Comics and Pops. He's with Team Nerd Herd. They've got a podcast. They're very into Star Wars. In fact, they're going live tonight with Azor's Tiger to show off a haul that they got down in San Diego.
Oh, sweet. Sweet. So we're in the old universe, and of course you go through this drought outside of Shadows of the Empire. It was kind of a big thing up into the prequels. So are you a prequel fan or no?
I am because first of all, the return to Star Wars was so exciting, right? What was that, 97? I was so pumped on that. I love Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Darth Maul, the clones. There was just so much, I know Jar Jar gets a lot of hate, and again, I'm wearing this shirt just to be funny. He's not my favorite character, but you had Ewoks, you had Jar Jar, right? You had every series has got their thing. You got Porgs. Yeah, there you go. And you met Ray Park. That was pretty cool. Yeah. So I am a big prequel fan. I would, I really like Revenge of the Sith for the dark element, Of course, in anything, there's things that you want to throw out, like there's, like Vader. No, there's things that you could toss out, but I'll add another dimension to it. I was playing Star Wars Galaxies, which is an online video game similar to World of Warcraft, but that was released in 2003, I believe, and I was playing that very heavily during the time when those, prequels were really strong. So that only enhanced my online gaming experience.
Okay. So, did you read the novel by Matthew Stover for Revenge of the Sith?
Yes, I got it downstairs.
Okay, I felt like that was a great appendum to the movie, and just like with any movie, when you're talking about movies versus books, the movies are going to kind of gloss over some things that the books bring out. So, always read the books. But did you hear the interview that Dave Filoni did talking about the Duel of Fates in Phantom Menace?
Was it on one of the Disney Plus specials?
It might have been. I seen it on a YouTube. This guy was reviewing it, so it might. But yeah, so Dave Filoni, and of course, this is the guy for Rebels and Mandalorian and all that kind of stuff. Is a true Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
So if Marvel, DC, any of you comic companies out there are listening, if the YouTube algorithm will push this video out to you, take note that when you want to further brand these icons that you have purchased and paid good money for, and you want to make money on, which we're totally okay giving our money to you for them, right? But put somebody in charge of it that loves it. Don't put somebody in charge of it that wants to turn it around just for the sake of turning it around or making statements, political or otherwise. Right. Give somebody that loves it. Dave Filoni was a Star Wars fan before he made Star Wars stuff. And you can tell anytime he's interviewed that he's in it, and it shows in his work, right? Because that love for the universe comes out.
A lot of artistry with Filoni.
Exactly.
And Favreau.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of them. And so in the interview with Duel of Fates, and I had never thought about it this way because I'm thinking Duel of Fates is, okay, Qui-Gon versus Maul, right? One's going to live, one's going to die. But Duel of Fates was the duel of Anakin's fate. So if Qui-Gon wins, Anakin never becomes Darth Vader because Qui-Gon was the mentor that Anakin needed, the father figure. See, and we're not going to get into parenting, but when you parent, you shouldn't be their best friend. You're their parent. Okay. You're not their best friend. And so that was the problem with Obi-Wan raising Anakin, because he largely treated him as a brother, not the father that he needed in his life. So it was the fate of Anakin in those two fates. If Maul win, which he did, then he would become Darth Vader, because he would not have the mentorship or the leadership that he needed. So I was like,
yeah, that's great. I hadn't thought about that. And, I love the prequels. I kind of feel like if the reception was stronger, would Lucas have sold to Disney? And, would we, because as you mentioned, right, the expanded universe, to me, when that ended, when Disney killed the Star Wars expanded universe canon, something in me, I lost a little passion for a time. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, had those prequels been better, well received, and Lucas had continued on, what would that be like now?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think what it would be like now would be Mandalorian.
Yeah, which I love, which to me has restored my love for the franchise, for the current franchise.
Well, and it's funny that all of a sudden, well, they're making Star Wars movies every year, and one goes bad. Some is not well. They're not well received by age-old Star Wars fans. I like the meme that's out there that shows J.J. Abrams and him saying, "You can't please the new fans and the old fans." And it shows Jon Favreau. He says, "Here, hold my beer."
Exactly.
Let me show you how it's done, guys. And that's what he did with The Mandalorian, because how many Baby Yodas were out there? And I've got a Yoda from Empire Strikes Back, the toy line, up there on my shelf. And, how many new people that knew nothing about that or really cared nothing about that wanted to see a little Baby Yoda?
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, now Lady Sith is a huge Star Wars fan, but downstairs there's got to be like 20 Baby Yodas, right? She has, like my bookshelves have been overtaken with Baby Yoda collections, and I like Baby Yoda as much as the next guy, but she is crazy about him. So Baby Yoda plush. In fact, you can see behind me a life-size sideshow Baby Yoda on the top left. Yeah. So that was her birthday present.
Oh, and you ended up with it, okay?
Well, it looks good on on the stream next to the Kylo Ren helmet, which she bought.
So yeah, I mean, that you're right. When Marvel first came out, I wouldn't read what started with the Jason Aaron run of Star Wars and all that. I have since gone back and picked up that, which was good stuff, especially the Darth Vader run with Ian in it, and Charles Soule. Love that run, and the current runs that they're on. I mean, it is good stuff. Until the wait a minute. So let me pause here. I know you've seen the. Yeah, pause. Not that kind of pause, but pause for another reason. But yeah, so have you seen the last episode?
Yes, I have.
So spoiler alert for people in the chat that may not have. Okay, when Luke shows up, I mean, there were people just like crying, right?
Yeah.
There were people just like, and that's what you want to get people to spend money for it with, on your stuff. If you got them that hooked, they'll buy it. That kind of Luke was the Luke that we were all looking for in Last Jedi.
Yeah.
That's the kind of Luke, if you read The Rise of Kylo Ren in Marvel, that's the kind of Luke that was there. I mean, he had those moments where he was just kicking butt, taking names. And I'm like, did they not read this stuff? Where's the source material here, people?
Right, exactly. I kind of have to look at it. Lady Sith's brother told me to look at it this way. He said, you can have your own head canon. So I kind of look at the Disney timeline as like a alternate universe or like a multiverse or something. You know what I mean? Because I got the expanded universe, the old expanded universe in my head, and then I got this other Disney timeline. Yeah. Because, like you said, I mean, those novels that goes into Luke being a Jedi Master in the Academy and all that, those are fantastic. Which I far preferred than the Luke that we got in the Disney sequel or trilogy, if you will.
Right.
But like you said, I didn't. I actually collected the new Star Wars, like Kanan and Star Wars and Darth Vader when they came out from Marvel, but then I got out of comics for about a year or two.
Okay.
So I got back in and bought them all up just in time for them to, rise in value. But yeah, I definitely, it's definitely two different timelines in my head now,
Well, and that's interesting, and basically Disney has done that, right? Because they're labeling stuff Legends versus the new stuff. Are they releasing anything in the Legends deal, or is it just the old stuff that's Legends? They're only releasing new canon stuff. Do you know?
You mean into comic books or
Into like books?
well, okay. I'm simultaneously continuing to read the expanded universe books, and I'm reading the new Disney books, right? Because we're streamers, we collect Star Wars. I got to be up on what Disney's doing. I can't wish that the old expanded universe is going to come back. It's not.
Right.
So I actually just finished the first Disney book, and I didn't really care for it because it was definitely, it was called Master and Apprentice. It was about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and it felt very like a lot of angst between them, and like a lot of emotion, and Qui-Gon doesn't like me, and it seemed like a lot of stuff that just didn't ring true to me how I remember, like in Phantom Menace,
Right.
their relationship. But I am reading that. I think let's see. I had some stuff here for you. Gosh, where'd it go? Here we go. Shadows of the Empire. This is Star Wars Insider number 29 from the 90s. Star Wars Insider, Kyle Katarn. It's stuff like this that, I mean, I don't know. I'm not aware of any spec or anything like that, but the timeline fits with, like, say, Mandalorian or some of these shows. It would be interesting to see if any of these characters would show up. That would be cool.
Well, they brought Thrawn back,
right? So
and
it's possible, especially with Filoni and Favreau being such fans of the franchise.
Right.
For me, I already own most of it anyway, but I like to have it in high quality. So I buy this stuff not to flip or to spec, but just so I don't pay more later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and to me, the Vong trilogy, or it wasn't really a trilogy, it was a much longer set. That storyline, though, would have been great for the follow-up. You could have pushed it into like 3 movies, and just done one long movie, broke it up into 3, and leave Jason, Jana, and Anakin.
Right, they were wonderful, great characters. In fact, I'm reading one of those books right now. I started the New Jedi Order in 2015. I'm still reading it, man, because they're like 400-page novels, and there's like 15 of them or whatever. Because I'm reading all the Star Wars novels in chronological order with the comic books at the same time. So it's like it took me a while to get to, say, the New Jedi Order timeline, and I'm trying to finish that off. And there's still like another 20 novels for me to read, and then to go back and reread it all because I always want to stay immersed in Star Wars.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the stories were great. I mean, there was gravitas to it because, I mean, Anakin gets killed in that series. Of course, Jason, good name, misspelled it a little bit, but anyway, he goes on to become a Sith Lord, and his sister has to strike him down. And going back to The Last Jedi, I didn't have a problem with Luke dying. We knew it was an inevitability, right? It's just the grumpy old Luke that's some whiner in the corner somewhere, as opposed to when we left off with Return of the Jedi. You had a guy that stood up to the Emperor and said, "I'm dropping my lightsaber. Read between the lines. I'm it, man."
Yeah.
And then you go, and then if you read the novels, I mean, Luke, all through the novels, just kicked butt, took names.
Exactly. That was the Luke that we wanted. You know what I mean? Like the Luke we saw at the end of Mandalorian.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. In fact, when Lady Sith and I went to go see Force Awakens, and they took Han out, I just looked at her and shook my head, and I was like, oh man, because I've been Lady Sith is a fan of the franchise. But, on a consumer level, watching the movies, right? I've been telling her for our entire relationship all about the novels, the comics. She knows I'm way deep into this stuff.
Yeah.
And so you know, and with us being so close to Disneyland right here in Orange County, we've got access to the rides and the merchandise and stuff. So we're like a Star Wars couple, Lady Sith. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it works out great. I mean, well, you know, but yeah, I mean, there's so many good characters in those Jedi Academy series, whether it was Chewie's nephew or you know, Lobaka and all that. Well, the other thing though, in the Vong, Chewie gets killed in the first book,
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
and so to me, that would have been the better route to go, and it would have been timely because, you know, Peter Mayhew, of course, passed away. He was in the first one, Force Awakens, but somebody else played him in the other one too because he got to where he couldn't get around. So it would have been kind of timely to have taken him out at that point.
Yeah.
But you know, whatever. From my understanding, Harrison Ford really wanted Lucas to kill him much earlier.
In Jedi, that's what I heard. Yeah.
But you know, but the reality of it is, hey, he came back for a little cameo in the last one. So you throw this, he's coming. Okay.
He's a force ghost memory.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, he's a force ghost. Really? When did non-Jedi start being able to do that? Okay.
You know what's interesting is you were showing the Heir to the Empire novel the other day or just before, and so I've got a few raw copies of the comic here. But so when I show this comic now, right, there's two characters in particular that you think about, right, that come to mind, and which ones are those?
Me, it would be Thrawn and Mara Jade.
Right. Okay. So what's interesting, obviously, this book is taken off because of the so-called first appearance of Thrawn.
Right.
What's interesting is I was reading Dark Empire. Do you remember that series? Came out in, was it like 92? And at the very end of issue number 1, in the end notes, Thrawn is referenced in it. And I posted this on my Instagram if any of you are following me. So it's kind of like Thrawn got a mention in the end notes at the end of Dark Empire number 1 before this comic. And, you know, in this crazy world of people buying previews and ads and all this kind of thing, I wonder if we're going to see a bump on Dark Empire number 1 just because Thrawn is referenced in the end notes. I have not seen anybody post this anywhere until I did. And the reason why I noticed that is because I'm starting to do these Star Wars character spotlights on my YouTube channel, the Sith Lordly channel. And so I'm now going back, instead of reading a comic in like 10 minutes, I'm like focusing on every panel and every word and thinking about what character I'm going to spotlight, looking at everything very carefully. And it was interesting to see Thrawn's mention in Dark Empire in text.
Wow. Okay.
Out of story.
So that too. It's been a while since I read that one.
Yeah. It's not in the story, but it's at like the end, like a reference material end notes kind of summary.
Well, I know that he was in that Topps magazine or that Topps Star Wars comic previews or something before.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah, so it's interesting because with Dark Empire being an actual comic book and being mentioned in a summary text, at least it's a comic and not like like a magazine like Star Wars Insider, right? Because people are like, okay, well, this doesn't count because it's not a comic book. So
like the first appearance of Boba Fett, right?
Right. In the super special, I got those off to the side.
Yeah, so talking about that, I've got my copy of that, but then the other day I was on an Instagram auction and they threw it up. And normally I can't type fast enough to beat people, but I bought one for $2.
Wow. You know what? Let me grab this here. This is what you're talking about?
Yep.
Have you seen this? The little novel of the same thing? Yeah, I wasn't aware of this. And then there's a YouTuber, a great guy named the KMN 1977, I think he is. He highlighted this. So, of course, I bought it. I wasn't aware of it. But, yeah, so you got both of these.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to collect everything, man.
Get it all.
Yeah.
So there is so talking about comics, I guess that's a good enough segue into a video I did the other day talking about foreign editions. And so, talking about Star Wars and Star Wars 1, there are many, many foreign editions out there. This is an Italian version of Star Wars 1 right here. So, I think that I'm going to go after that. Star Wars 1 set. So, when I say set, that means all of the first ones. Did not put it on my goal list, but if I do come across it, fairly reasonable considering what kind of book it is, I'm going to pick up that 35-cent price variant for number 1.
Excellent.
But
now,
yeah,
are you saying you're going to go through the foreign edition set or the original Marvel set?
Well, both.
Okay.
So the original set that goes to 107 or 106. In the original Marvel set, yeah, all of those, which only need like 26 to get that. But then the foreign editions of issue number 1.
I got to show you then a recent haul here. So I've got these books already, but my LCS got in a bunch of number 2s. First Han Solo, first Obi-Wan Kenobi in story, first Chewbacca, first Millennium Falcon, first Death Star. And so, I mean, he was selling these criminally undervalued. I got them for a great price. And then with the Rogue Squadron news, he was selling, and he still has these number 5s, first Wedge. So if anybody is looking for a very fine copy of number 5, my LCS has got them, and he'll probably ship to you. It's called Nuclear Comics. Just hit me up on Instagram as Sith Lordly. I'll put you in touch with the LCS because, I mean, his price for the quality of books is insane.
So Sith Lordly's Instagram is in the description of this video, as well as his YouTube channels, Sith Lordly and then Spintex. So both of those are in the description below if you want to get in contact with him about that. Actually, I think that's one of the ones I need in my set is the first Wedge Antilles. And I didn't know this, but I think the guy that plays Wedge Antilles, is he Ian McGregor's uncle?
That's right, Dennis Lawson, yeah.
And so who would have knew that he was Obi-Wan's uncle, right?
Right. You know, and I loved Rogue Squadron. You probably read the novels like I did. You know, what were there, like 10 or 12 of them? I wonder, I'm hoping, you know, the Rogue Squadron we get will be similar to that. But, you know, you just don't know where Disney's going to take it. But so if they don't use Wedge, and I mean, Wedge is older now, I guess they could DH him. But, you know, will they? Because is he that impactful of a character to the general Star Wars audience? I don't know. We'll see if some of this hype on Star Wars 5 and Rogue Squadron 1 die down price-wise.
Right, before you start getting into that. Well, you know, in the novels, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Wedge's daughter was a character in the new deal, right?
I'm trying to think of his daughter. I know, like, Jaina Solo was active in Rogue Squadron. Gavin Darklighter, Biggs Darklighter's cousin, took over, and he was flying. They had Tycho, and they had Corran Horn, a Jedi. They had all these great characters from that expanded universe in Rogue Squadron. It was so cool. And again, I mentioned I played Star Wars Galaxies, which I still actually play on an emulator. A lot of those characters were kind of brought into that video game, and you could interact and see them. So that was fun to mix, you know, the expanded universe, not just being comics, but novels, video games, all kinds of stuff. I've got for you, I had for you a video game here that fell.
And I Love Disney and Comics was asking a question on that first Boba Fett. Was that an ash can or a paperback book?
What's that now?
He was asking if that was an ash can or a paperback book on that first Boba Fett.
It's paperback.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Marvel Comics is what it says on the side.
Okay. Yeah, paperback book.
This here is a Shadows of the Empire mint on card video game reproduction. I think it's for the Nintendo. But there's a company called Limited Run Games that remakes these video games. You can play it if you want, but I just decided to, you know, have it, just buy it, you know, for display purposes. And I own like the original Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back in this form too. So speaking of the expanded universe, right? It was like the video games, the comics, the novels, the little miniatures, like like for Dungeons and Dragons, but this is Star Wars, things like that. I just loved how it all mixed together.
Well, and if you're Disney, who owns Star Wars now, I mean, that's exactly what you want. You want them to buy every single thing that you put out there. You want people so entrenched in the universe that they see the movies, they read the books, they read the comics, they buy the merch, they come to their Disney World. I mean, that's the whole purpose of owning that IP and paying what George Lucas for it. That's what they do. But so yeah, the Shadows of the Empire was a pretty cool novel, and you have Dash Rendar and Kyle Katarn, which was the character in the games that came out after that, which were pretty cool. I think I played the first two. I did not play the last one.
I just got this in. This is the Shadows of the Empire vinyl.
Oh, wow.
This is the soundtrack, which is awesome. It sounds just like a John Williams type of soundtrack. I already own the CD to this, but you can get this. I think I got it for under $20 from a company. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Verise Sarbond or something like that. But it's really cool. So, yeah, it's just cool to have.
Sure. And when you're talking about 1977, you're talking about 43 years ago. I mean, there's even in the lull stages in between movies. I mean, you're talking about an expanded universe that has a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of characters that people can latch on and say, this is my man, like Chewie is my guy, or the Ewoks are my characters, that type of thing. And so it's easy to, get ADHD when it comes to collecting Star Wars. And all right, so let me ask you this. Who's your favorite character?
Okay.
Or do you have a character?
Yeah, I mean, okay. Growing up, it was Han Solo, of course, right? Like, I got all these Halloween photos of me. My mom would make me these like Halloween costumes. Lady Sith and I were just joking the other day. It was like a vest with a holster, jeans, and boots, and I'm Han Solo. Han Solo and Boba Fett to me were awesome growing up, but now, I mean, I really have got, as I get older, right? I'm less into the heroic hero. I'm the hero. Like, I'm more interested in the dark characters, kind of what they're going through, like Darth Vader, obviously, the Sith Lords. I know my name is Sith Lordly, so it's like, well, he must really be into those. I think too, because Jedi couldn't even have a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like Sith Lord can do what he wants. So I really like I find the Force users to be really interesting. There's a lot of depth to those characters, especially kind of like the rise and fall, or like Anakin, right? The rise, the fall, the redemption.
Right.
A coworker of mine, ex-coworker of mine, he said, hey, really the Star Wars saga is about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, because, I never really thought about it too in depth. I'm not what you would consider like a Star Wars expert. I'm more an expert at acquiring merchandise. Like I think I saw like Kev Collectibles in your chat. That's a Star Wars expert, just the knowledge that they have. I'm trying to be more like that. But yeah.
So Darth Bane, did you read the Darth Bane novels?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's there's probably not a name you couldn't throw at me that, I had. Like, you and I are very in sync with all of this. It sounds like we read all the same stuff, collected the same things.
Revan.
Yes.
Of course, I like the Knights of the Old Republic game too.
I was going to pull out a miniature. I thought I might have Revan or Bane up here, but yeah. Knights of the Old Republic, great comic series. Loved it, along with Legacy, which was awesome too, with Darth Krayt and
look, Legacy was my jam. So look, I was collecting, and then I've actually got to change the boards and bags out because I've had them since they came out. So that what makes them like 14 years old. So I got to looking the other day and I said, holy smokes, these books are worth something.
Exactly. I was going to try and find the first Revan.
At that, these characters are going to be used in some form or fashion. But to me, and it looks like Marvel and their Disney as a whole are going to start doing this. And that's let's get out of this little bitty timeline we call, Return of the Jedi until the Force Awakens.
Right.
Why go back to Force Awakens when you're angering nothing but fans, right? And so let's go in this huge universe you've got. Years before all this took place, they're releasing High Republic now in Marvel Comics. You've got Revan, you've got Darth Bane. I mean, you got all this stuff that takes place before BBY, before the Battle of Yavin. Yes, and only nerds refer to things and before BBY, right? But yeah, I mean, that's how they, chronicle things. The Bane books were awesome. I love Disney and Comics says. Yes, they were pretty cool.
Thinking back to, you had mentioned Dash Rendar,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually did a little research on him, and there was it's downstairs, but there's remember that Solo film that came out?
Mm-hmm.
Disney put out a little, like a companion book for that, where Dash Rendar is referenced. So apparently he's now canon in a reference mention. So I thought that was interesting. I'm going to do a little spotlight on him, and I bought that book just so I could have it and have eyes on it to confirm what I read in Wikipedia about him.
Yeah, and I think that Disney's figured out. I mean, they had to kind of clear the slate a little bit with the decanonization of that stuff, but they figured out that there's a large audience that really likes those characters. So that's why they're thrown out. I mean, that's why they're pulling little bits and pieces. I would not be surprised if characters like Mara Jade do make an appearance. She might not be Luke's wife, but she's a love interest at some point. And so I really would be surprised about that, just because of people liking those expanded universe or EU characters like that. But mentioning Kyle Katarn.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's the hardcover. Is that right?
Yeah. That's the hardcover. Jedi Knight, there's 3 of them. And of course, Dave Dorman killed it on the art.
I just bought all 3 in softcover.
Oh, okay.
And what I noticed, if you look at his love interest on one of the pages, she looks just like Dr. Aphra.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
And so I made a post about that as well. I thought, I wonder if she's the inspiration for Aphra, because like her look and her clothing look just like it.
Yeah. Hold on. I got a picture of it right here. So if y'all can see this right here, she's got the little headgear and stuff. Like that does. But yeah, I mean, there's so much to draw from. I mean, Disney will never run out of stuff with this, with the IP that is Star Wars. So are you reading the current comics, the current Marvel slate of comics, Bounty Hunters, Darth Vader, Star Wars?
Exactly, I am. And, it was interesting to see how they brought in the bounty hunter, Baylor Valance. Remember him from, I think it was Star Wars number 16 from the original series. Yeah. And so, that started to get hot because people started to get wind that it was the same bounty hunter. But meanwhile, I was at Eric's in my honey hole, Azores Tiger. We go to the LCS, and I found like 4 of those in the $3 bins. Wow. His first appearance. Again, I don't flip Star Wars, but I just like to have multiple copies for my own collection.
Yeah, and I like the arc that just finished up with Bounty Hunters. The Darth Vader, I think, because if you think about it, when you think movie wise and talking about Darth Vader, there's really not a fleshing out of all the stuff that he went through. There's a couple of books that were done in what's now considered non-canon about Vader, and after all that went down. But in the comics, it really gives the struggle that he had and how he would go over and the flashbacks, essentially PTSD, right? That he went through in his experiences, and the constant struggle, so that if you fast forward to Return of the Jedi, what Luke saw in him was there, right?
Yeah. I'm even reading IDW's run. So this here is the first appearance of Disney Plus's Star Wars Resistance, Kazuda Xiono. So this character right here was the main star of 2 seasons of a Disney Plus series. This is a 1 in 10 variant. It's the only graded copy in all of CGC, and it's a 9.8, so I own that. And to go along with that, I own these are about 19 of his first appearances, and this is IDW. So that's Kazuda Xiono right here, and that's Poe Dameron, and that's BB-8. So yeah, that's IDW. So I'm reading IDW and Marvel.
Yeah, and do you know why that Marvel would let IDW, facilitate that as opposed to just doing it through the Marvel house?
I don't know why, but I've also noticed they do that with, other like actual like Marvel heroes like Captain Marvel and Hulk and things like that.
Yeah, there are a couple of ones that are more kiddish in nature.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like trying to get the book I showed here, all of these, like if you can find it at the LCS, it's maybe at the kids section. It's probably been handled, right? You're not going to get a great copy maybe right off the rack. I checked eBay. It's pretty dried up of this comic. I actually bought 2 more off Amazon, believe it or not. I found some at cover price. Definitely there's no spec that I know about with this book. I just love this character because I'm of Japanese descent myself, so I identify with that character. I think he's fun. I follow the character actor and the writer on Instagram, so I just like I just collect a lot of that issue, but don't pay more than cover price for
it. You heard it here first, folks. So of the current slate of Marvel books that are out with Star Wars, what has you the most excited? Which one do you like the most?
Of those projects that we heard?
No, let's go there first. I was really talking about the comics. We'll go to the new projects that are slated. Which one has you the most excited?
Well, I mean, Bad Batch seems interesting. Those clones, because we saw them in Clone Wars, and I thought they were pretty cool. And I don't know, did you ever read Karen Travis's Commando series, Rebel Commando?
Awesome.
Didn't the Bad Batch, I don't know if you watched them in Clone Wars, but didn't they kind of remind you of those 4 clones in her series? And like you said, right, Mara Jade might come in, but she may not be Luke's wife. It seems like what if those are reinterpretations of those clones, not Scorch and Fixer and whatever their names were, but now they have new names. It like there was just kind of some built-in interest for me with those guys. Okay. I think if Filoni and Favreau can maintain the level of quality on these new series, then it will go real well, and I'll be excited. I just don't want to slip back into that Disney trilogy and have like some of that applied to like the Rogue Squadron or something like that. You know what I mean? But if everything holds true, then I would be excited about Rogue Squadron, Ahsoka, and things like that.
Yeah, so Tacoma Comics, he's a Star Wars guy,
and he's a D&D guy. I've been watching his D&D sessions on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, his son is the dungeon master. So
yeah,
that'd be interesting. And talking about the Karen Travis books, it gave a different perspective, right? Because in the main line, all you saw were clone troopers. The reason they can't be bartenders because they never make a shot. So, that's all you see. But it tells the story of, okay, Django didn't train these guys because Django died essentially early on. So who trained them? Other Mandalorians, right? And the interaction that some had, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was more of a father type figure versus the other guy. He was a hardliner, and they were like, why is he so loving and you're so hardline? He's because I don't want you to have to go through what I've been through on the battlefield. So it was really interesting.
Yeah, and Tacoma brought up a good point too about Rogue One and Solo. I did enjoy Rogue One quite a bit, and I felt like it didn't really disrupt the expanded universe timeline. Solo, I thought was fun. Of course, you're looking at someone who's not Harrison Ford playing Solo, and I thought, they did a good job. I wonder if they refaced Harrison Ford's onto the Solo body like they did with Luke, what that would be like. Somebody actually did that on YouTube, and I watched a few clips. It was interesting. But I read the Han Solo trilogy, which maybe you read, where and I really liked that trilogy. So I'm kind of judging these new movies like, well, was that better than the original Han Solo origin story? But if I take off my expanded universe hat and just look at it as a standalone film, yeah, I enjoyed Solo. It was cool.
Well, and the other thing with that, you're right. I mean, you have iconic actor Harrison Ford. You're trying to put somebody in there with that. There's no gravitas to what's going to happen because he's not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he's going to live and go on to New Hope and that kind of thing. You already kind of know some of the things, and I think it was a little too much. That you knew how things were going to shape out. There were too many hands because of the director's situation, Ron Howard coming in at the end of it and all that kind of stuff. That added to it. And the other thing, we as a consumer set the bars too high for some of these movies. They can't cross over. It's like I've talked about before, like Aquaman. Warner Brothers makes $1 billion off of Aquaman. They say, well, it was largely not successful. What? You made $1 billion.
Yeah.
How is that not successful? Because they're comparing it to Marvel movies. Okay. And so if Star Wars makes a lot of money, that's all you need to worry about. And if it keeps fans buying your merch, which you make more money on, let it worry about that. Don't worry about it trying to get the standard way up here.
I think, yeah, you got to collect and consume what you like. Some people will like this or that, and there's nothing wrong with it. However you want to do it is fine. Guys like you and I have probably been in the Star Wars game a long time, like things a certain way, and that's just natural, right? So I like just that there's Star Wars is wonderful of any sort, and so I certainly don't judge who might like this or like that. I like it a certain way, and like they made the Snyder cut of Justice League or whatever. I wonder if someone will make like a certain cut of the new Disney trilogy and just boil that down into like, I could probably do that myself. Where
3 minutes?
Yeah, you can, take what you like. Because I really like Kylo Ren. I thought he was a cool character. There was a lot that I liked about that, and there's like anything, there's things I would keep and things I'm not into, but that's fine. Everybody likes what they like.
Yeah, sure. And you're right. And knowing that, as long as they don't depart from the core of the character, because with Luke, old fans, new fans alike, I think, say, okay, Luke should be this way. These are things that he does not deviate from. He can go do whatever, but his crux, this is what he is. Now, if you start trying to change that because you want to make certain statements, that's where I, as a fan, go awry. But making him do things I never thought he would do, as long as it's within his core of his being, of his character, then fine. I mean, it's gotta go somewhere at some point, right? You got to deal with new characters, and I like Kylo Ren too. I feel like the new series did not do him justice. And that's because of the change up with Abrams and Ryan Johnson and all that kind of stuff, I feel. But if you read in the comics, like which the only one I think right now is The Rise of Kylo Ren, but that miniseries was good. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is kind of fleshing him out as a character, and I can kind of understand some of why he thought the way he did. You don't always get that with movies, and that's why I like the books, because you can get more of that backstory.
And then you got what I talked about with Lady Sith, where downstairs it's all Baby Yodas. It's all also porgs everywhere. Lady Sith has got like 10 million porgs. So, people love porgs. They love Baby Yoda. They may not like Luke, or they may like him, but, you sell merchandise and there's like, 15 porgs downstairs. So that's a sign of success.
Well, and so I Love Disney and Comics says that he likes everything but the Christmas special. I don't think he really likes the Christmas special. I think that's just a special place because it was early Star Wars stuff and the characters were there. And, I think that's about it, right? But just for that reason. And I liken it to X-Men. So I have Uncanny X-Men volumes 1 through 5, every issue. So if if I did that with X-Men, there would be a lot of those comics I wouldn't have, because I did not care for the Grant Morrison run on the single titled X-Men. I didn't care for it. There were a lot of wonky stories, especially in the Silver Age of X-Men. And towards the end, right before the end of the first volume, 544 is where it ended. I wouldn't have them, but it's because overall I liked them, and I'm more of a completionist that I even collected them. And I think that, we're, to your point earlier, it's always going to be that way, and that's fine. You need new fans to any hobby. You just don't need to hack off your old ones.
That's true. And speaking of what you were talking about, I mean, I remember watching you, and you had mentioned like you like to build runs, and so do I. I mean, everyone knows me as, from Instagram as the Star Wars guy, but I've got so many X-Men and Alpha Flight and Spider-Man. I've got more Marvel and DC just superhero comics than I have Star Wars comics.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that stuff just as much, especially in the Silver and Bronze Age. Now, yeah, there is a lot of hokey Silver Age stuff, but I mean, I don't want to date myself. I wasn't alive in the 60s, but I do appreciate some of that culture. So I do like reading those Silver Age books. Kind of takes me back to that time.
Well, and the thing that I like about reading older comics, and kind of as an aside, is the ads, and a lot of times the story, because it just tells you where the country was kind of at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
If you think about the drug issues that Neil Adams did with Green Arrow, and Speedy was really speedy, and with heroin, but then you have Norman Osborn taking the drugs over in the Spider-Man comic book. I mean, that was groundbreaking at that time to be able to talk about it. But I tell you, I know what you might be watching tonight. Looks like ladies in the Christmas spirit. So you might have to soldier through it tonight. And so, yes, Tacoma completionism is a disease from which I suffer as well. Because if you think about that with Star Wars, the original Star Wars Marvel comics, they're not really canon. I mean, Roy Thomas didn't even look at the source material when he came out with it. Howard Chaykin doesn't even like signing an autograph to that stuff because he just felt like it was so bad. You had Jackson, the Green Rabbit, in the mix that George Lucas finally did away with.
A lot of it was very hokey. That's why another reason why I like the Dark Horse, because the Dark Horse was more serious material. I felt like it intertwined with the novels a lot. So to me, that's like my golden timeline for Star Wars are the Dark Horse novels. And I feel like they were just really getting amazing when they lost the license.
Yeah, because I mean, the Clone Wars stuff, I mean, the art and the story was just great in there. You mentioned the legacy. You're talking about the legacy with the Skywalker, Cade Skywalker, or if you're talking about the Solo descendant, I think that was titled Legacy as well.
With Ania Solo, however you pronounce the name. Yeah.
And so both were good. But yeah, I mean, even the older stuff. And I was looking at the Boba Fett's dad, Django. So I was looking at his stuff, his Dark Horse books. Dude, those things have gone astronomical just because in The Mandalorian, they basically made it canon.
Yeah. I just posted one last night on Instagram. It's whenever I'm going to do an Instagram post, I just reach in these 8 boxes of Star Wars, pull something out. Okay, I haven't shown this cover in a while. It looks cool. And that's kind of how I do it. Like, what's funny is Rogue Squadron. If you look on my timeline, I posted Rogue Squadron #1 a week before the Disney announcements, right? Okay. And so some of my friends were like, yo, did you have some inside information? Did you know? And I'm like, no, I just, cool cover. I hadn't posted in a while.
Right. Yeah. So hidden gems up in the house. Yeah. Star Wars 1. It was, and I've got a copy of it. I was this close to sending it off to CGC for the Roy Thomas signing. But I already had some really big books going there, and my copy is 6.0. So somebody, it's white pages, but it's 6-0 because somebody had sticky fingers, which I can understand, oily fingers or something, and there's fingerprints. Literally, I can track down who done it, right? Because fingerprints are so good.
Look them up in the database. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Because it's criminal. It's criminal what they did, ruining that comic book the way they did. So actually have a signed Howard Chaykin. He didn't want to sign because he thought it was all I brought. You're right. That's what I had heard, that he's kind of a character anyway. And he didn't really think it was his best work.
have you seen the treasuries? I've got them over here. Let's see.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, my my LCS had these for really cheap, for really good quality. So I had to have them, just as a completionist. And then here's a Return of the Jedi super special.
Yeah, I found some Star Wars magazines at an LCS I visited, and he gave them to me for $1. But it was the Dave Dorman Dark Empire art was on the front of it. And so I was really shocked. And it's not in CLZ, which makes me mad because then I've got to go manually put it in to make sure I don't accidentally buy it somewhere else.
Speaking of CLZ, I've been putting everything in there. Like these RPG games, Tacoma might like this, right? This isn't a comic book, but because I can manually enter this into CLZ, I've been putting in all of these books in there, action figures in CLZ, and just take a photo of it so that when I'm at the store, I know what I've got.
Yeah, I had asked you about that action figure deal. Now, CLZ also has another app, but it's for books.
Oh, cool.
And I put all my Star Wars books in it, but I haven't tried to. I'm thinking, well, you're the same company. It should be the same database. Try to scan like these books into one app, so I'm not having to pay for 2 different subscriptions for the same company. But yeah, because they change the covers for these so often, it'll throw you off, or at least it does me, because I'm like, oh, that must be a new book. And
I'm a snob with those novels too. I don't like the Legends banner that they put on the new prints, right? And so I've been I had all the novels, all of them, and I sold them when Disney took the license, right? Well, since then I wanted them back, so I've been buying them back, but without the Legends banner. So because I've got Amazon Prime, I can order any of them, but it comes with the Legends banner. So I go on eBay and I got to go find the book that someone has without it on there and pay a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, I'll frequent like used bookstores and try to pick them up there if I'm missing anyone. Because like you, and I'm sure a lot of collectors are this way. We get rid of our stuff and then we go, man, I really wish I hadn't done that. Or if it was just a season in our life where we needed to get rid of it, that type of stuff happens. But in either case, we end up going back and saying, I'm going to get that back. So.
Yeah, at least I had an excuse. The first time I got rid of it is, I was like 15, 16, I needed dating money, so let me sell all this stuff off to take a girl to Gremlins too, and then you look back and like, I wish I had that whole collection. Yeah.
Now you're really dating yourself.
Yeah.
So talking about Gremlins, not 2, but Gremlins #1, I think that ranks up there with Die Hard as top Christmas movie.
Yeah, we own it. Lady Sith and I love Gremlins. I've got all the NECA Gremlins figures, which are really cool to have. In fact, some of them have Christmas cheer, like they're caroling, so they're like holding like something to read off of, and they've got scarves and like Christmas candy canes and things like that.
Right. Yeah. That's so cool. I was in a comic shop in Memphis, and I walked by this box, and I looked at it like. You kind of turn your head and said, that looks familiar. And so I asked the guy, I said, well, what is that? And he said, that's the Magua box. So if you open it up, it's literally, when you open it up, you start hearing, Gizmo. And just was in the movie. So that was really cool.
I kind of joke with spine ticks, like we might start off as Gizmo, but like we end up like, pouring water on them and feeding them after midnight. So like second, third hour spine ticks, we're all Stripe, throwing stuff and yelling and screaming.
Well, as long you're not the Flasher,
right,
or the Gremlin crossdresser,
not yet, but who knows? Could happen.
You never know what's going to happen. You never know what points are going to get touched on.
Right.
None of what's going to happen there. That's true. And so we got Matthew Roybal up in the house. What's going on? Okay. Well, I just recognized you. So you got a different name. That's.
Wasn't he with you on the foreign editions the other day?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I pulled up his image, I was like, oh, okay, I know who that is now. You start knowing people by like their monikers on YouTube or Instagram and not knowing their real names. Sometimes that happens.
I thought that was a really informative stream you guys had with the foreign editions, because it's not necessarily something I'm collecting, but the whole process was really fascinating. How you guys go about acquiring those books, how Matthew was saying, right? You got to the community is really important, looking out for books that other people want, and how you send them to people and then they send them on. It was a pretty cool show.
Well, thank you. And I've had several people comment to that. And so I was glad that, because it was as much for me as it was for anybody else, because I have recently bit the bug on the foreign editions and spending way too much money on comic books, expensive paper, right? So I will show this as we kind of wrap things up. Looking for my DMs get like too thick because I don't ever delete anything. All right, so let me try this right here.
Yeah, Matthew, I don't need any more rabbit holes.
Yeah. Well, hey, there. Like I told Matt, I told him that Star Wars 1 was out there. So can you see that?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I said that was the print that was done by a local artist there in the Fort Worth area. And I got that signed by Ray Park the other day, and that's a picture of me and him in the pose. It'll be forever memorialized as 2020, the year that we thought that mask would stop a disease. But we're not going to go there. But anyway, he says, feel the power, and he signs it. And I just think that they killed it. So my wife took this to Hobby Lobby for me. And that's going to be that red border kind of matching his saber as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we got a Hobby Lobby right down the street, and I feel like I own stock in that company because I'm always buying frames. Got like 50 frames from them, of things hanging up in this house. So,
well, my thing, my wife frequents them more than I do, but my my thing is that if I feel like something's worthy of a frame, I feel like it's horrible for me to stick it in a corner somewhere. Whereas like with my comics, I can pull them out and read them, or I can display them on my wall display over there in the corner, and switch them out as I feel like, hey, I just want to see something new. Whereas a frame, typically you don't just take them down and put them in a corner only to change them out later. Mm-hmm. So it has to be really something in order to get framed. So I felt like that would go real well with that Dave Dorman print that I showed on IG not too long ago. Yeah, they do great framing, and it is cheap. And normally you can get like a 50% off coupon as long as they're not for sale. This is not a Hobby Lobby. But if it works. And so this is actually the only Star Wars action figure that I have in that black series. I've looked for the Revan, but they've gotten kind of high. I want the Kylo Ren one as well. I've got some of the pops, like the prototype Boba Fett, and some of the other Star Wars related pops. But so we are a little bit over an hour, and I do appreciate the people that have come in and hung out with us, and certainly do appreciate Sith Lordly for agreeing to come on and talk Star Wars. I didn't have to twist his arm. I'm just saying, but yeah, people like to talk with about things that they like to talk about, and so talking about Star Wars was certainly right up his alley. So why don't we just give a moment for you to kind of say, some parting words
Sure.
and you shout out what you might be doing on YouTube or the Instagrams.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you having me on. I mean, you and I have become pals on Instagram and YouTube recently. Really enjoy your show, and really thank you for having me on. And you can see from the background here, it's a clutter of collections, and that's just Star Wars. I collect Marvel, DC, way too many things. I am trying to create some content for my Sith Lordly YouTube channel. So I'm going to start doing character spotlights of little known characters, like kind of minor, insignificant characters that you might read about in comic books that nobody has touched on. That's interesting to me. So look for that content on my Sith Lordly channel. On my other collective channel, which is Spine Ticks, I was telling Jason that's kind of like the movie Animal House or Porky's. You get 8 guys, 10 guys talking about comic books, add some beer, and it gets pretty wild there. So that's definitely a different kind of show. It's a wild show, but we are delivering comic content, content about YouTube creators. We even play some card games on there. So that's Spine Ticks, which airs every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. I'm on Instagram, where I have probably my biggest presence. So check me out on Instagram under Sith Lordly. And if anyone's interested in playing the Star Wars Galaxies video game, which is an online experience like World of Warcraft, but it's set in Star Wars, hit me up, because I'm playing on an emulator of that old game. And you just have fun and just cruise around and level up your character, and so maybe there's a community that can be created there. So just let me know. And that's about it. Thanks again for having me.
All right. And so yeah, if you the description or the link for his channels both on YouTube and Instagram are in the description below if you want to follow him there. Also, as far as this channel is concerned, we'll be going live later today talking about new comic books, as comic book channels are subject to do on Wednesdays. And I have some pre-recorded videos both for Thursday and Friday. So some unboxings that I did for those shows. So be looking for that. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Be sure to do that and check out my 750 subscriber giveaway announcement video that's on my channel. And you can find out how you can enter to win an X-Men 4 first appearance of Scarlet Witch. And there's 3 different ways you can enter to win, and get up to 16 chances to win when we hit that 750 mark. So be sure to check that out. Other than that, that's about it. I do want to again thank everybody for showing up and being active in the chat. Always makes for a more interesting show. And remember, this is the season of Christmas, and especially in this year, as crazy as it's been, we want to kind of focus on the things that really matter. And I know we talked about Star Wars and our love for that, but our families and those type of things during this time, we're certainly blessed if you're able to be around them. Keep that in mind, and till next time, keep reading and keep collecting as we get out of here. See ya.